Kia ora koutou katoa to the NBR whānau, and welcome to this week's edition of Te Ohanga Māori column, focusing on Māori business. I'm joined today by columnist Barry Soutar via Zoom from Tūranganui a Kiwa, Gisborne. Kia ora, Barry.
Morena, I'd like to say it's a beautiful day in the place that sees the sun for the first time on the world dateline, but it's grey.
Excellent. It's always nice down there, I'm sure. So this week you've written about leadership as a key determinant of startup success, and I believe you saw it on display amongst the recent winners at the New Zealand International Business Awards. What can you tell us about what you saw there?
Well, the New Zealand International Business Awards is the award ceremonies that have been running for, I think, about a decade by New Zealand Trade and Enterprise, and they really are about recognising export leadership. In that respect, they are really trying to provide models of success for others to follow and aspire to, and also in recognizing leadership, it's about trying to get that leadership models shared for other exporters. And if we think about the way the economy runs, which is if you are just a domestic company earning money in your local town and not doing any export, then you're not really contributing to the growth of the country. You're probably providing a very valuable service, but that's not where growth comes from. It comes from attracting foreign direct investment and international revenue.
Okay, and you've mentioned there that Kiwa Digital, run by Steve Renata, won on the night. You've got a few nice things to say about Steve. What did you find in terms of leadership there?
So leadership comes in a couple of forms. One is in terms of how you work and operate internally in your company, the kinds of values and culture and vision that you carry at a personal level inside the company, and then how you provide some consistency around your authenticity in doing that externally. And I'd have to say that Steve's one of those who's had to learn somewhat the hard way on how to do that, which is fairly common experience for New Zealanders. But he's got a real interesting background to that. So he didn't arrive in the company Kiwa Digital as a raw piece of talent. He came with some pretty significant corporate success, growing Les Mills to the monster it became before he departed.
So, I mean, what are some of the other key components of leadership that you see, and perhaps are there any differences between the Māori conception and versus the other cultures?
Yeah, look, I don't think any particular culture offers a exclusive ownership of what good leadership looks like, but I do think that Māori Māori that have been exposed to their culture probably come with some predispositions that advantage them, and one of those is the service ethic. So we all grew up with the idea that some of the exemplar entrepreneurs were these Wall Street type individuals, but that is patently false. Those guys they don't have the sustainability. I mean, when you look at the Wall Street example, and then you look at Warren Buffett, he's got a consistent culture of values and authenticity that is the same no matter what audience he is in. And so when you look at Māori who grow up with the culture and that service ethic, you see it kind of expressed in a couple of ways. One is how they treat and understand the obligation to the whānau, the marae, their people around the marae, for example. And then it's how they then authentically transfer that into the other aspects of their life. So, it's you can't, if you've been raised with the culture in that way, it then becomes very difficult to be unauthentic. To live your life in a compartmentalized way, which is to be an open-hearted, collaborative, and supportive person from your Māori background, and then go into business and be a cutthroat individualist.
Yeah.
So that's why I think there are some, and so I came through myself, as an example, through the 1980s and 1990s cultures of Rogernomics in New Zealand, that sort of thing. And I can remember when everything was privatising in New Zealand, and how ugly some of that culture and behaviour was. I don't think it was good for New Zealand back then, and certainly it's not good in business today. And I can remember the conflicts that I had personally over ethics and values that I observed from some of the senior leadership in New Zealand, both politically and within the corporate sector.
Yeah, you mentioned the 28th Māori Battalion as well. I'll have to mention that my koro was second lieutenant in the Māori Battalion, Frederick Te Tifa Bennett. So is it? I suppose that's a bit of an exemplar of Māori leadership there.
Yeah, look, that's pretty interesting, actually. You are absolutely right. The leadership there is certainly exemplar because of the measure that we use, the metric we use for measuring success in those environments, which was how effective were you as a unit in achieving your objectives, while at the same time minimizing casualties. So it's one thing to be gung-ho, rip the other proverbial word and bust,
Yeah.
and take an objective, but you've lost half your men. So that's of no use to anybody. And so when you look at why they were able to hit the success rates that they had, while at the same time having a 2/3 the expected casualty rate, then here's the interesting thing. The only thing you can put that down to is leadership and tactics. Now, you look at tactics, and tactics are just sheer intelligence to be able to come up with plans that you create in advance and then you execute in action. So like Mike Tyson always says, everybody has a great plan until they get punched in the face. Same thing, in business. So once you're actually in the trenches and you're fighting, it's that ability to pivot and take some new tactics. And so when you look at the Māori Battalion experience, they were totally excellent at doing that. Take a plan, find it doesn't work in the moment, pivot, change, and hit new success planned on the moment. So then, how does that happen? Well, it's a collective of what the culture brings to those guys in the team. They were all related. So there was immediately straight away a obligation to perform at a much higher level. So my niece, her husband is in the New Zealand Army. He's just come back from England, training the Ukrainian soldiers. He said, do not underestimate the Ukrainians. He said he saw 20,000 young Ukrainian men training every week in the UK. And he said they're putting them through the most accelerated military training for all of the forces that are helping train in England. And he said their motivation and their sense of duty, their obligation, is so powerful that they, as trainers, were motivated to give their best to help them learn. And he said, what you saw was a guy who was a week ago was a baker, on the back streets of a city in Ukraine. And now he was training effectively to become a infantry soldier in the battles, and quite conceivably become a special forces soldier very quickly. But that their ability to pick up the information, all that sort of thing, was clearly and then execute that was clearly a result of that high cultural obligation that they saw on behalf of the country. Māori had that same thing, which was we had to do this to be able to survive in New Zealand. Secondly, um, I can never come home if I have to face my auntie to tell her why I didn't save her son, my cousin. And so you found in the Māori battalion that in difficult circumstances, they would not leave. They would not leave their relatives.
Yeah. Well, let's hope that those Ukrainians can get back to leading in the business world as opposed to on the battlefield. But thanks very much for your column this week, Barry, and we'll see you in a few weeks.
No worries. Thank you.